So today is Monday, December 4, 2017. This is the meeting of the CSI implementation group. Let me share my screen and we can go through the agenda doc. Let's go to the agenda doc here. So first up, we wanted to discuss the issues that we've been working on last week and over the weekend. First up was the CSI volume plugin using the wrong attacher. PR for that went in over the weekend and was merged. Yay. So that's green. Second issue for the feature gate, I believe this was also merged over the weekend. Yep, that's green. And then third issue, plugin specifies wrong attacher, was approved and also merged. Yay. So huge props to Vlad for getting those out. Next up was volume info missing, and that was merged as well. Next up is the issue, actually let's go through the green one. So device registrar terminated and forced restart by daemon set. I fixed this over the weekend and pushed a new Docker image. And excuse me. So let's talk about these other issues. So one of the issues that Jan reported in his email was the directory name for setup at is incorrect. And I think there was some confusion about this. Jan, do you want to talk about this?
Well, setup at expects that the directory name has a very strict format because that's used for reconstruction. And it includes name of the volume, but it's not a PV name, it's a name in the container specification.
Okay.
So it's completely useless for CSI at all. And at teardown, you get just this name, the container mount name.
Mm-hmm.
And that's everything you get for unmount. And that's not enough for CSI. What I saw in different plugins like RBD at setup, they put things into JSON, store it somewhere, and that at teardown we could find the driver name and volume handle and everything in the JSON.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's nice. On the other hand, if we use mount device and unmount device from attacher, then in these directory names we can stash anything. We can use the driver name and volume handler, we can put it into the mount directory name there. So that's why I suggested to implement mount device and unmount device instead of setup and teardown.
So the mount device, unmount device, we can't make that change right now. Do you agree with that?
I don't know, we can make it.
So the problem with that would be it would break the CSI expectation, right? CSI, the spec says that we must call this every time essentially a workload is scheduled.
That's right.
Once per volume, then it would be violating the spec. So I'd prefer not to do that. So the alternatives are either the plugin, either we store a JSON file and use that to recover. So what is the information that is required to tear down that's currently not available?
The driver name, volume handle, and that's it.
Driver name and volume handle. So this is what I was confused about because I thought that the path already contained the driver name and the CSI plugin name and the volume handle.
Now, if you look at the get unmounter or new unmounter, or how is it called, it gets just the CSI, not CSI, container mount name, and that's it. It's in a different file. It's in
Okay.
Go.
So let's assume that's the case. So if that is the case, then you're saying that essentially this is the path, var lib, kubelet, pod ID, volume, and just CSI is all that we are currently using. So if we...
No, you get also slash name of the mount in container spec.
Name of the mount in the... Oh, okay. Instead of the actual volume handle, okay.
Yes.
So can we modify it to, instead of being the name of the mount in the spec, make it the actual volume handle?
I don't think so, because in my opinion, this is used for when Kubernetes is down and somebody deleted the pod.
Mm-hmm.
Then what Kubernetes does, they split it and they expect that the volume name is there. At least that was the case before volume manager was introduced. Now we have some information in no status, but I don't think this is used.
This is for, you mean the volume reconstruction logic?
Mm-hmm.
Can we disable the volume reconstruction logic for this plugin?
I don't know.
Are you asking Saad if we could use the volume handle as instead of the pod UID there?
Sorry, no, the question is not about pod UID. We're going to leave that in. Apparently there's after this part of the path, there is a slash and it contains the volume spec name as identified in the Kubernetes spec.
Okay.
And what we need in the volumes, especially for teardown, is the actual CSI volume name. And so the proposal was to replace that with the CSI volume name. But I think what Jan is suggesting is that that might break the volume reconstruction logic, which Kubernetes has. I think that volume reconstruction logic is kind of broken anyway.
No, but I think they'll have a bigger issue, which is if you use the volume handle, it right now has no limit. And you have a limit if you're going to use that volume handle as a path.
I have one question.
Right.
So how is it working for today's drivers? Because when we create a monitor object, we're passing it a volume source, right? We're passing the entire spec, right?
So today, it depends on volume plugin to volume plugin. A lot of volume plugins will actually store the volume handle in there. So like if you look at GCPD, it'll put the volume name of the GCPD drive in there so that when it needs to recover, it'll use that to find the drive name and then use that to detach the drive.
Well, actually, most of the volume plugins at teardown, they just blindly unmount
whatever path is given to them.
Everything else is done in unmount device, which then has the name.
But from the directory in the teardown path, if you can get the volume name by parsing the directory name, will that be sufficient?
Oh, you mean have a two-level?
Not a two-level. In the teardown, we are getting already a path, right?
Yep.
We always construct the spec from the path anyways.
Yes.
No.
Now, when Van is constructing the mount, he's constructing the path based upon the same spec.
No.
Nope. So what's wrong with
Pod doesn't need to exist anymore. It can be deleted already.
No, we're not talking about the pod, right? We're talking about the directory name.
Yeah, but you can't reconstruct anything from that.
Why is that? So something.
You can't reconstruct anything from that. You can just reconstruct CSI mount name in pod spec, and that's it. There is no driver name, no volume handle, nothing.
Oh, you're talking about a volume handle is missing.
You could dump a small file next to it. Right?
Yeah, that was one of the proposals John had. That gets a little bit tricky because then you get into the business of managing an extra file and trying to version it and all the fun that comes with that.
Yeah, that's true.
If we could avoid that, that would be nice. If we could encode everything that we need into the path, that would be the easiest path forward.
Yeah, well, like I said before, if you do path wrangling like that, you have to put limits into things.
Yeah.
So
yeah. As soon as you end up with a volume handle which is longer than the path name, then you're screwed.
And you're screwed. Yeah, it won't even create.
So sorry, go ahead.
So let's say when we're creating the plugin, when we're creating the directory in the setup head, right? So we have a spec. From the spec, let's say we create a path. We never create a path we create a path with the volume name. The volume name in this case is actually kind of not valid because all the calls are based upon volume ID. So let's change the volume name to volume ID, create the path with volume ID.
Yeah.
So the key is down, you get the volume ID, and that's the only thing you need for the...
Right. So the drawback there is two things. One is what Luis was arguing, which is that the volume ID or the volume handle can actually doesn't have a limit on the size. So if you have a volume handle that's very long, it could be longer than the path. Second issue, I mean, that one we can say, okay, we'll put like a Kubernetes limit and say your volume handle must be a certain amount, and we'll push that into the spec. We could get around that theoretically. The second issue is what Jan was mentioning, which is that currently the reconstruction logic in the Kubernetes volume manager relies on the volume spec name to be part of the path. And if that's replaced with a volume ID, that reconstruction logic may break.
Maybe. I don't know. This is ancient code. Nobody looked at it for years.
That's not completely true because if you don't implement it all depends on the get volume name. I spend my enough share of time in there.
Yeah.
The get volume name, if you return the volume ID as a get volume name, then things should be okay from what I believe. We can try with that.
Okay.
And
did we ever get around to disabling volume reconstruction for certain volumes?
I don't know. I don't think.
No.
Chakri, do you know?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then let's try that approach, Chakri. Could we do that and just have get volume name return the volume handle? And then
I don't know.
Volume handle inside the path.
Do we have any validation on volume handle? If it contains slashes and double colons and spaces and all these kind of characters that should not be in path?
We will have to do the escaping, the same thing that we do with the volume handle or with the plugin names. There's a escape routine that we run the name through. So we would have to run it through there.
You may actually expand the size.
The size, yeah, but we could truncate it to a certain max length.
And you're gonna hit collisions.
Yeah, I mean.
So how about we put both of them in there? Maybe like you put the volume name and today we put the GCPD kind of handle, right? Put both of them in there and try with that. That way. And then we are trying to reconstruct, and the only way reconstruction works today is save everything in the path name. So we will store both the volume name and the volume handle. And when you get a teardown request from the directory name, we'll figure out. I know it's kind of clumsy, but that's the best.
I'm okay with that. I think this is exposing a bigger fundamental issue with Kubernetes, that the volume reconstruction logic is just broken. We had a big meeting about this earlier, I think in the beginning of this quarter or last quarter, to discuss trying to fix it. We all agreed that what we should do is what Jan suggested, which is having a JSON file next to every mount to say, to have full information about it, PV, PVC, etc. But then we couldn't agree on what the format should be and how we should version that file and how we should make it backwards compatible. And so what we did was, we'll just kick the can down the road. And
no, actually, the other conclusion we were looking at was we will wait for the kubelet checkpointing to kick in.
Oh, that's you're right.
That's the conclusion, actually. Right. So okay, then we should check the status of the checkpointing. If not, maybe we should one of us to take that item and then try to push.
So the JSON thing, I think we can potentially take that as an item for next quarter, but not for the freeze right now. During the freeze, let's just modify the path to contain sufficient information. What do you guys think?
I'm not sure. This escaping is pretty hard, actually.
Yeah.
You can escape it easily, but you can reconstruct the original name would be hard.
Good point.
Now we replace slashes with tildes.
Yeah.
But what if there is a tilde in the name?
To change the whole thing to a basic.
That's gonna be tricky. Actually, we can put a restriction saying that volume handle cannot contain slashes. What now?
No.
Okay.
It's a string. It's a string. That's what the spec says.
I know.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Shakri. But I just think that,
Okay, so then maybe CSI is the first place that we get to play around with JSON files. Actually, I think Jan mentioned that Gluster and a couple other volume plugins already do it.
Yeah, I don't like it, but Ceph uses it.
No, that's again becomes like today the way they have it is there's a plugin specific JSON file, and the versioning is not.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay, but it must work across upgrades. If I upgrade the Kubernetes, if I upgrade kubelet, then the new kubelet must understand the old format.
So it's not kubelet actually; it's a plugin which is taking care of the JSON file today.
It's kubelet.
The plugin is part of kubelet, so same thing.
No. What I mean to say is, kubelet doesn't dictate the versioning of the format of the JSON file. So if you look at format, that means that it's a plugin which maintains the versioning. It's a plugin and has a.
It doesn't change a thing. It needs to be upgradable.
So I think what Jan is arguing is that whatever component is creating and consuming it must ensure that they maintain backwards compatibility if the format ever changes.
Okay. So that's the debate we had. We said that instead of letting every plugin do it, move it into the framework so that way like you can manage the versioning better. Because if you have 10 plugins.
So I mean, in this case, what we would do is not have the drivers do it, but the entry volume plugin, the entry CSI volume plugin, when it creates a setup during setup it would create a JSON file with the sufficient information required for recovery, and then on the teardown, it would read that information and pass it through as necessary.
I have a.
But then the question is, how would it pass it through? Because the only information that it can pass through is the path.
So the way people are doing it is you unmount the path. Once you unmount the path, there's a JSON file in there.
Oh, I see. And then the JSON file contains information that is. So, Jan, the reason that we can't just unmount is because why?
We don't have enough information to construct the node.
Oh, the global path.
We need driver name and the volume handle.
So it's like a chicken egg. Okay.
So it's a suggestion that.
Hold on. So we need the driver name and the volume handle because we need to detach the global path.
We need to unmount whatever.
So like there's a target path that I'm going to give the volume plugin. I'm going to say tear this down.
Yes.
So the easy volume plugins like NFS are just going to unmount it. Done. No problem. Right?
Yes, but the hard one.
The hard ones are going to be GCPD, EBS, which have to do reference counting because they have a global mount path, and then they have the pod specific mount paths. So if we call unmount on the pod specific paths, we're not done yet. We need to, if this is the last remaining pod specific path, we need to unmount the actual device. And so right now what you're saying is that there's a lot of complicated logic inside the volume plugin to manage that. So I think the answer is, let's do this. So for these volume plugins, put the complicated logic in the driver for now. Have the driver spit out a JSON file. When they do the setup it creates a JSON file that contains the required information it's going to need to do the teardown. Then what we can do is post alpha. We're going to try to push CSI to update to have a mount device path. If we can get the mount device path into CSI, then we pull the problem back into Kubernetes again. And then we'll have two different mount paths that Kubernetes is going to manage. And then we can also consider fixing the reconstruction logic by controlling our own JSON or doing checkpointing.
Not sure if it is going to work for every possible CSI driver. If I have
is it possible?
It's only required if you have the multi-level mount, meaning you have a device that needs to be mounted, and then that path needs to be bind mounted into the pod specific container. If you don't have that, then it's easy.
Well, if you need just unmount in Node unpublished, then it's okay. If you need anything more than unmount,
right? And then so for the majority case, which are going to be the cases which are going to be complicated, the majority of those are going to be very similar to EBS and GCPD, which hopefully will get cleaned up once we introduce a mount device call in CSI. And then there's going to be a small number of complicated plugins which are doing something else, which we don't yet know. But for those plugins, we say, you're going to have to eat the complexity inside your driver. You're going to have to do whatever you need to do, whether you're adding checkpointing, whatever it is, you're going to do it inside your driver to manage that.
Then we need to change CSI because Node unpublished currently takes volume ID.
Yeah, I don't know if that's possible because...
Sorry, what's possible?
What you just said. Because then that would mean that CSI drivers have to have dependencies on each of the COs.
No. What I'm saying is, sorry,
I misunderstood.
Well, currently the CSI expects that Node unpublished gets the path to unmount and also volume ID.
Okay.
Now we are going to remove the volume ID from CSI. It's fine for me. Not sure if fine for CSI driver authors.
I see what you're saying. We don't have to strictly remove it from the spec. If some volume plugin wants to use it, they have to use it, they have to maintain some state to be able to use it. For the majority of volume plugins, they're not going to use the volume ID. They're just going to use the path and unmount it. And
but it's us who is supposed to fill it.
I think that's going to cause issues.
Oh, because we have to fill it.
The CEO is supposed to handle that.
We have to fill it, and we have to figure out where it's coming from.
I would suggest this. Is it possible by any means, in the context that we are right now, that the sidecar container can do a lot of this?
I mean, it is currently doing a lot of this heavy lifting.
No, I mean, like what you're asking it to do. Can it do the marshalling of the handle in place of file? Can it do any of the glue logic that we need to make this succeed? Because
we are moving this logic from kubelet to this driver.
Yeah, and I'm doing it on purpose.
That'd be a bad idea because the driver should essentially act as a pass-through. It shouldn't be actually manipulating the mounts or anything like that.
No.
Manipulation.
The sidecar container, I mean.
Yeah, the sidecar container doesn't actually do the mounts, right? I think if it is not in the actual execution path, it's just in the control path. It's saying somebody else go do this, not somebody else go do this and let me try to help you with this.
Well, okay, that's because what I'm just trying to do is I'm trying to remove the code away from the kubelet so that this can continue being fixed externally, right? Because from the kubelet point of view, it's saying this is the standard Kubernetes way, so figure it out, and we could then out of band continue to experiment and edges on an idea.
I think what it comes down to me then is that if we push for a device mount in CSI spec, we're also going to have to modify node unpublished to remove the volume ID. And that is going to probably get pushback because folks have probably already started coding against that. And but the argument we could make is that if the volume ID is important, then you should implement a mount device. Otherwise, it should just be a dumb unmount for you. Can we come up with a case, a concrete case where that wouldn't be true?
Yes, Ceph RBD. It doesn't have control publish. And you also iSCSI has the same problem. You attach something on the node, and you must know the server name and IP address and ports and volume ID on the remote, and then you can attach and detach the volume from the node.
Isn't that how NFS works too?
In NFS, you just do unmount, and that's it. You don't care.
So if we had,
Yeah.
in addition to attacher, and we had like a node attacher capability, where mount device is part of the node attacher capability. So you don't have to implement the full attacher, you just have to implement the node attacher, which does mount device. And then that would satisfy, I think, iSCSI and Ceph.
That would be nice, but then still we need to remember all this stuff on kubelet to call, instead of tear down, we will call Nota Detection. That's the same.
I mean, we already have logic in kubelet that will call mount device, and then it'll call setup mount device and then setup at. The only difference would be that today mount device is only called if attacher is implemented. We would have to modify that to say there's an additional interface, which is not just attacher, but it's kind of in the middle. It's a node attachment.
Sir, actually, if we push this to the plugin for now, right?
Yeah.
Because I can see that enough pushback from the CSA also for that. But let's say if GC is capable of doing it, if you push this mount plugin and make it like a kind of a library in the CSA common or somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, what Jan is currently doing, right? You're implementing complicated logic inside the CSI driver to maintain state.
No, there is no logic in the driver.
Could we do that as a way to get by this for alpha?
So what is the particular state we are looking for over here? Is it the volume ID name or
It's
is it
the volume handle? Yeah.
So volume handle, if we agree like what RBD is doing, right? If you put a JSON file, I think that's simpler and easier approach, right? And be done with it. But the only thing is which path you need to store it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. It's definitely good for alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So for
wait, hang on. So you wanted to serialize the JSON file between the driver and the CO?
No. Between the driver and itself.
Driver itself. I like that.
Okay, so where's the driver supposed to write it? I mean, if you're
wherever it wants. It could be along with the mount path. It could be wherever it wants. Like if it has a separate.
It's volume plugin, not the
data store.
I would say put it in the. If you look at the Saad screen, you will see over there is highlighting the Kubernetes tilde CSI. You can put it into the volumes or the. This is the actual complete mount path, right?
Yeah. No, I think there's something at the end which includes the spec volume name or something.
What are you going to do on file or operating systems where they can't write to the file system?
You should still be able to.
These are all MKDs, right?
No. RBD and iSCSI already writes the JSON file, so we can copy and paste that somewhere to CSI volume plugin, but it's volume plugin, not the driver, who writes the JSON.
Yeah. So I think the argument is let's just have the driver do it for now, and then we can pull that logic into
driver.
Yeah, that's just the part where I get kind of because
you need a special driver. It's not CSI driver. It's a Kubernetes CSI driver.
Yeah, that's just what I mean. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
Well, that's not necessarily true, right? Because if otherwise, like the spec currently just doesn't give you enough information, right? But, oh no, that's not true because you have volume ID as a CSI field.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like maybe the sidecar container could take care of it.
It could, but it would need to proxy all the requests and do some logic on them, which it doesn't currently.
No, yeah, I agree. I'm not saying that. Oh, maybe for alpha we just say CSI drivers have to do this until we figure it out. That's okay. We can have it as a release note. Right?
So if the driver serializes some JSON stuff, that's not so bad as long as it's only for Kubernetes and it's not going to affect the performance of other cloud providers.
Yeah, it's for alpha.
And yeah, make sure this is for alpha. This is
and it's not for all volume plugins. It's only for volume plugins that implement that have a device that needs to be mounted, and then that global mount path needs to be bind mounted to the final.
But we should still have the premise that CSI driver will work.
Right, the same driver will work anywhere. It's just that it's doing extra work for Kubernetes.
Are we saying that we need a CSI driver that's special for Kubernetes? So everything's going to have, every CSI driver for Kubernetes is going to have
not every CSI driver, but CSI drivers that are mounting devices will need to be
That's
specific.
bad news, I think.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
It needs to not matter. Like if we have to have like Kubernetes CSI drivers, that kind of kills the appeal of everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Saad, do we need to have the global mount for sure? Or can't we do the multiple mounts? What is the limitation over there?
So your device needs to be mounted. I don't think you can mount a device multiple times.
It should be, right? In the Linux, it allows that. The only thing will be like, you can't mount it as a read, write, and read only. Two access. They're not supported.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
If that's
you can. Traditionally, Kubernetes allows read-write many with block devices if all the pods are on the same node.
No, let's say that if I have a sidecar container, and that's a backup job, right? And if I want to give, I don't want to give a read-write permission to the backup job. I just want to give it a read-only.
And
right, like if you have maybe not in the same pod, but if you're in two different pods and you want to export the same volume to read-only to another pod, you cannot do that because when you mount a device, you cannot mount it as read-only and read-write.
Yes.
The same device. But if you bind mount it, you can do that.
Yes, and that's
can you mount two devices read-write, or is it the same device read-write in two mounts?
No.
You can. You can actually even NFS mount.
Yeah, NFS, but not anything, not a block device.
Can you do the fuzzy device?
You can.
What? All right, who's telling the truth here?
I can show it to you a demo.
It depends on the file system on the device, and X4 and XFS will grab themselves.
ext4 does it, XFS does it.
Wait, hold on a second. I still want to investigate the thing where the sidecar container is proxying. I don't think it will take that much work. It's only a few calls you have to do. It drops in a CSI compatible gRPC call, socket, and it just only interprets the ones that it has to, and it just passes them along, right? It's only a few calls, right? And I think you would be able to. We can do that externally, and it will solve the situation.
Yeah, it's not pretty, but it could work.
Yeah, it's definitely not pretty, but I think it makes it external. It is only a few calls, and it will make everything compatible.
So essentially what we could do is have the external attacher say, okay, I need to do a setup. I have a call to say, do node publish. I don't know what the volume ID is that I'm supposed to pass because kubelet didn't give it to me. So what I'm going to do is in this path, create a JSON file with the required volume ID, the volume handle. And then when I get a teardown for a specific path, I parse that path to figure out what the JSON, or parse the JSON file to figure out what the volume handle is, and then put that as volume ID in the node on publish.
And now the CSI driver is oblivion. Is that the right word?
What do you think, Jan?
Well, it's something to do. It could work. We need some directory to store this information that's persistent enough, but it's doable.
So how is it different from driver storing it? What is abstraction for it versus sidecar?
The sidecar container knows that it's running in Kubernetes. That's the difference. The driver does not.
In this case, the CSA plugin is writing the file, right? The CSA plugin stores information in the JSON file, and CSA plugin reads it.
Yeah,
the difference is that we don't have to check code into Kubernetes.
Yeah, that's it. That's the only reason.
Okay. If that is a goal, okay, I agree. Okay.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, technically, we still probably could get it in if we needed to. We've got like probably a week.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of where we want to put it. I think if we put it in the external attacher.
So there is one difference though. Today, the node publish and node publish calls are directly going to the CSI driver. They're not going through the sidecar.
That's what I meant. It would have to interpret. It would have to drop in the CSI driver, a gRPC socket in that location. So it pretends to be.
Oh no, that's not going to work then.
Why?
You have to do a proxy then. You have to do a proxy.
Yeah, and we're not doing proxy on the kubelet between kubelet and the CSI driver for mount.
That's no, but you could do it because it's pretty easy.
We could, but we were trying to avoid that, like not having an extra layer there because it was unnecessary.
No, it seems like it's necessary now.
It's not necessary. It would be nice.
It would definitely be nice not to have it. I completely agree with you. But right now, in the time that if we had like 3 weeks, I wouldn't even mention it. But we have 1 week. We have no testing yet. Which is quite crunch time, right? So I'm just suggesting that we take this externally and we solve it there.
So in order to do this externally, what it would require is for us to change the sidecar container that sits with the node driver needs to be updated to act as a proxy.
Yes.
And it needs to do the handle the node publish unpublish calls, and it will also write
and the get node.
Versus the alternative is that we modify kubelet to do the same.
Yep. But then you could find another issue, and it's just not enough time. Just my suggestion.
Frankly, guys, I think we're cutting this whole thing too close. I mean, these are like big design issues, and we're already past our cut date.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Brad, are you leaning towards external as well?
I'm leaning towards we don't try to ship this. We don't try to rush it.
Okay.
We're not test. I mean, we haven't done testing, and some of the testing that we've done shows that it's not really working at all. We have a couple of these.
What are you suggesting? Do you want to not declare it alpha for this quarter or disable it, or?
Yeah, I probably not declared alpha.
I don't think this is that big an issue.
I hear what you're saying, Brad. It's getting scary now.
Yeah, it is scary.
Yeah,
and we're about to rush some decisions that we may regret later.
So let's start from this.
Sorry, go ahead, Chakri.
Let's try with the JSON file in the CSI plugin inside the kubelet for now. That's what IceCast is doing, RBD is doing, right?
Okay.
If any other issues, then we can reconsider it. We still have maybe give it by middle of this week for us to.
Otherwise, do it external.
Yeah. I want to do completely external, but the only thing is the proxy is going to be big pain to deal with.
Yeah. So currently, I think that would seem viable. If we get it in, we get it in. Otherwise, we do it external. And the code could be reused if we do it external. The only problem with that approach is going to be that we would need to modify our documentation, which is going to be external anyway, to suggest how the sidecar container for the node should be deployed, whether it's going to act as a proxy or not. So today it's not acting as a proxy. And so that means the socket is dropped directly from the node driver directly onto the host machine, versus it would be through an empty dir to the sidecar container, and then the sidecar container drops it. It's not the end of the world since we control the documentation, but just something we should keep an eye on.
True.
Okay, and you know what? The other thing is that this is an alpha. And so even if let's assume we stop work today, and we say we only support non-device volume plugins, it's an alpha.
Yeah.
Okay, we still need to fix it though.
I agree we should fix it, but like I think to Brad's point where he's arguing that we should not ship as alpha.
We can't fix it without extensive logic because of teardown. Doesn't give you enough information. We need the JSON somewhere.
It's not only for device files, actually. Everybody has the same issue.
Yeah.
Even NFS has the same issue.
Even who has the same issue?
NFS.
NFS?
Yeah. Because in the end, the teardown, it just gets a directory name. Nothing else.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's try to get this into entry. If we can get a PR out in the next few days, we'll be okay. If not, let's move to external. And we can modify the device registrar to act as a proxy.
So keep in mind that me, Jan, and I believe Luis are all at KubeCon for the rest of it, right?
Actually, even Saad is at KubeCon, so.
I am not at KubeCon, so I can help out with this.
You got the short straw on that one.
I got the short straw. Okay, I can spin up a PR for this if no one else is willing to volunteer. All right, I'll take a crack at this then, and who wants to review it for me?
I'll definitely review it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, you guys are going to be available. As long as you're available for review, I think that's okay. So let's go back to the issue list that we had. I think this was the last issue that we have remaining. Chakri, your unmount is not working. Probably hitting the same issue, right?
It's the same issue.
Okay.
And I have one more thing. Actually, Vlad pointed out. Vlad was pinging me the name format for the CSI.storage versus CSI.volume.
Oh, that was in the chat window, right? Like you guys were just talking about it. Is it this?
Yes. I'm a little bit leaning towards CSI.storage because we have like a networking.kubernetes.io today. So storage and networking will be better volume than like
I don't care either way. I think whatever we decide, we should keep it consistent with, I think there's a node ID one. I think the node ID went in with CSI.volume. So we would have to change both of them if we were to change it.
Okay.
I say let's leave it as is. If we really hate it, we can change it for beta.
Yeah, that's fine. This is anyway going to be removed going forward, so that's fine. Okay.
Cool. And there was something that Vlad said he was going to be working on his flight. Do you know what this comment was about?
The target path today, I'm creating it inside the driver.
Oh, right.
So
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, that should be a simple change.
Yes.
Okay.
I did it just because like I want the CSA tool to work.
Yeah.
So, but that's not recommended because the SC Linux and the 640 permissions or whatever permissions I want the CO to dictate it.
Got it. Okay, cool. Sounds good. So that, let me add it to the list. So that one's being currently worked on. Mark it orange. I'm going to mark this as red because it's a big risk right now. And then we can convene again on Wednesday to discuss it. Do you guys want to meet tomorrow morning or just meet on Wednesday? What is your schedule looking like?
I can't do it tomorrow. I'll be at the
Yeah, tomorrow, I'm not sure what I can meet the rest of the week, honestly. We have fun stuff.
That's fine. So for whoever can meet on Wednesday, then feel free. Otherwise, we'll take it to chat and go from there. I'll be here all week, so.
Yeah. Also on the E2E test, are we talking?
Yes.
On that?
Yep.
So I started on the documentation last week, and then wanted to get more documentation and E2E tests. I'm gathering a lot of information from you guys, so I want to just compile it, and I want to start doing the E2E tests this week.
Okay.
So I'll start testing everything that's been done.
Okay.
I won't be able to unmount. So.
Yeah, that's pretty annoying.
Yeah, but that's okay. I don't get to that stage. So I'll see what happens in a couple of days from now. It'll probably be done. The information we need, but for this. So.
And then the docs, are you trying to do that in parallel or?
Yes, definitely in parallel. This is on the wiki, easy to edit. Anybody, again, I invite anyone can add a blurb on whatever they know about. So it's just a wiki, so it's really easy to edit. So.
Okay, so end-to-end tests. I think the deployment packaging stuff has already been done. Where are you guys putting it? Are you just putting it next to the volume plugins themselves or the drivers?
Right now,
yes.
Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the documentation is going to point to them wherever they are.
So I have one flex adapter one which is working. It's there in the drivers. Flex adapter examples, simple NFS. It's a little bit deeper in the path. So but I'm going to put together even for the other NFS and SCSI driver, so they will be available right over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting. Every driver is going to have its own.
Right.
So
I think the general format is going to be the same, but it'll just more or less be copy and pasted.
That's why the documentation for driver developers should have, this is how you set up the sidecar container, right? And then you put that with your driver, and this is what you do.
Okay.
Actually,
have folks reviewed the official documentation for this?
The official one was in that one that other person that's on this team wrote? Yeah, I'd reviewed it.
Okay. Do you know what the current status is?
You got merged, as far as I know. No?
Merged? Okay.
Yeah, I can
double check that.
Yeah, I definitely got merged to 1.9.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that's in. Then we're going to go ahead and mark that as green. And so the entry documentation you're working on this week, and then the blog post is due by end of day. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to send you guys a draft at some point today. Read over it, see what you think, comment on it. I think today only the draft is due. We might have a few days to iterate on that. And then for the volume plugins, Chakri, it sounds like you're currently blocked on the unmount side, but the attach and mount sides are working okay.
Yes.
Okay.
This is already inside the tree.
And they're already in tree, or they're already part of the.
Yeah. So the deployment files are not there, so I'm going to work on them next. So GC I'm putting in the backseat, given the P2. So a little bit, but I will keep on working on it, and it's not going to be in tree, right? So we can always get it work in the meantime. Okay.
That sounds good to me. All right, cool. Anything else?
So I have one thing. Can you open the drivers repo? I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to try end to end.
Yeah, let me pull that up. Let's do.
And Shaku, you're here in Austin?
Yes, I'm there in Austin. Yeah.
Because maybe you and I and Jan and Brad can sit down for dinner or something, and I can talk about the steps for E2E.
I need to refactor the directives a little bit, but I will do that later. Flex adapter. Examples. Okay, and deploy / Kubernetes. Actually, we have the README over here. So these are the files. This is all you need to do.
Nice.
Hello privilege, and just create, deploy. Example, and Nginx is also there.
Cool. Deploy in Kubernetes, kubectl, deploy Kubernetes, create.
So that's going to refer to the deploy packages. So that has attacher, which is based upon the AMS template, and Node plugin RBAC. I created a separate file.
Sweet.
And this uses a simple NFS driver.
Okay. So I noticed that Jan also had the deployment scripts as part of the external components.
Mm-hmm.
Should we put them in one place, consolidate them, or keep them in both?
I think having them separate where attached to their own repo, like it is right now, is fine. I think the documentation where people will go to will have the links to them. This is my suggestion.
So keep them in both places?
No, typically people deploy the plugins, right? And each attacher will be depending on the plugin.
Yeah.
So then it's going to be tricky because now it's let's take if you say iSCSI.
Yeah.
iSCSI will have its own attacher. And having it in two places will be like a little bit tougher for them to deploy. It doesn't have to be. I'm going to add it, but
I think that having it as long as you have a link and document it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It has to be a custom for every driver anyway, right?
Yes, exactly.
So each driver must have its own deployment directory.
That's right.
And the only use for having it in the external dash folders or repos is as an example, basically.
Yeah, this is the
Yes.
Okay, so I say let's just leave it in both places, and then for the CSI attacher one, just put that it's an example.
Yeah, that one's just the mock one anyway.
Yeah, and same thing with the external provisioner. Okay, that seems reasonable.
And if you go down to, just bring up just 2 seconds, go down to the docs and go to the wiki. And then this is drivers on the right side. So this is where, there'll be a table here and it'll give you links. Actually, it's already linked. So it'll show up automatically as a user. I should be able to click on NFS and it puts me to the README on how to use it, right?
Nice. Cool. Okay.
So completely off note. So remember we were talking about whether a block device can be mounted twice. Can I share it and show it? It can be mounted twice.
Oh yeah.
I checked and it can be actually.
Give me 1 minute.
I think changing the kernel.
No, it need not be. So you can see that over here.
If it is on the same machine, you can mount it twice. So you are right, agree.
And you can write it, you can mount it read-write twice, you can mount it read-only twice, but you can never mount it read-write and read-only.
Yes, that's the only reason why we need a bind mount.
And that's a use case that we don't necessarily support read-write and mount, or read-write and read-only.
On a block device, I agree with you though, because then it has a requirement, it has to be on the same node.
Okay, so then if that's the case, that actually is an escape hatch as well. We should still try to fix this issue, but that's a backup option.
Yep.
So option 1 is let's get the JSON thing into entry. If that fails, backup plan is do the JSON thing as an external proxy. If we decide not to do that, option 3 is to do this, which is do direct mounts instead of a global mount.
Mm-hmm.
But that means for alpha, we're not providing volume ID on the node publish call, which will be kind of ugly. Okay, so at least we have options. All right, folks. Enjoy KubeCon, and whoever is available on Wednesday, I'll see you then.
All right, take care, guys.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye, guys.